All right, hey there, folks. Even with conventions, readings, and other author-type events back in action, I figured I'd keep bringing book tour to you. So, welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster, Season 9, Intriguing Interviews with Creative Minds. Well, I can't believe it's here already, but tonight is our season finale, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate with tonight's guest, my friend GAIL Z MARTIN, founder of the Hold On to the Light blog campaign and a world-class supernatural fan. GAIL is an author of epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, and paranormal romance, writing novels and short stories, with her tales having appeared in more than 35 anthologies, both here in the U.S. and in the U.K. Welcome back, GAIL.
Well, thanks. I'm thrilled to be back here. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. All right, just a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send me notes or questions you have for GAIL in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. Okay, GAIL, as we always do, we'll start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Meadville, Pennsylvania. I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, that little tag end of Pennsylvania that juts into Lake Erie. So way up there in the snow belt, and lived there for, quite a while, moved to Pittsburgh for 10 years and then moved south.
And moved south. Okay, so Meadsville, so it's really up. So I was just talking, I did a show last week on the mysteries of Buffalo, because I went to school in Buffalo. So all the way on the eastern tip of Lake Erie. So you were on the southwest.
No, I was only 3 hours south of Buffalo. Buffalo really? Wasn't far from us. If you go up I-79, 90 cuts across and takes you to Buffalo, and to get to my hometown, you keep going straight on 79 towards the lake. If you miss my town, you end up in the lake.
Okay, fair enough. So then you were about how far from Cleveland to the west from you?
I would say probably about 2 hours.
About 2. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, all right. So was it? Did you guys were the winters rough out there? Did you get hammered?
Well, they were back then. I think climate change has kind of made them less terrible than they were. It's not the kind of place you want to go visit in February, but I remember a whole lot more knee-deep snow than they seem to get these days. And then, of course, when a storm would come in on the lake, we were right in the dumping ground where it would bring the humidity and then dump the snow. So, we used to get 100 inches of snow when I was growing up there. I think they get less now.
Good God. Wow. That's like what Syracuse gets. That's crazy. Whoa. So did you get, you were a couple of hours from the lake. When I was in Buffalo, I was literally right near it. Did you get those crazy, did the winds come in, or were you kind of like sheltered from that?
We didn't get the winds so much. It's about 45 minutes from where I grew up to the city of Erie, a little further to the lake itself, or Presque Isle. But it wasn't so much the wind. It was just something about the way the weather worked is we were where the precipitation would come in and then dump, and we used to get it good.
Okay, so when you grew up, was it just you? Was it brothers, sisters? What was your clan?
Nope, I'm an only.
An only child? Okay.
Only born to late in life parents. So.
Okay, so what did your parents do?
My dad was a doctor. My mom was a teacher. And they were the World War II generation. They were adults. They were in college during World War II. So we kind of skipped a generation in there. It took them forever to figure out what they wanted to do. So, and get around.
Same for me.
Yeah. And get around to having a family. So I was it.
What kind of doctor? Was he just general practitioner? Was he a specialist?
Well, back then, you did everything from warts to babies. So he was a general practitioner from the old days.
Was he at a time when did he actually make house calls, or had that kind of passed by then?
Yeah.
Wow.
Patients he liked well enough.
Wow. Because I don't even remember kind of when that kind of like phased itself out, but wow, a house call kind of wow. So what was that like? To know that that your dad was a guy who would just say, oh, got to pick up my bag and walk out the door and go to someone's house to do whatever.
Well, there were no end of people who would greet you by saying, yeah, your dad delivered all 3 of my kids or whatever. I think it was half of the town. And there were missed vacations and missed trips and missed, things to do because, when somebody's having a baby, they don't wait.
That's how it is, right?
Yeah.
Huh.
Or he'd work emergency room and it would be a 24-hour shift. But,
Right.
that was
So,
just, when you grow up with it, it's just how it is.
so was it one of the, so what was it like? I mean, I didn't grow up kind of in that kind of a community. Was it, the sense that, you're saying, oh, my dad, your dad delivered all of our kids and whatnot. Was it one of those things where just, did everybody know your business because everybody knew who you were through your dad?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it wasn't Mayberry. Mayberry was about 20,000 people, I think, at the
Okay.
time I grew up there. Now it's shrunk since then because a lot of the industry has gone away. But so it wasn't a teeny tiny village or something. My husband's from a town that's only about 1,500 people and one stoplight that blinks after 10 o'clock.
Right.
So I, by comparison, was from the big city
Oh,
because
you
we
were
were.
all right.
Yeah,
So for Meadville, you were a city girl by comparison.
I was because we were the county seat, and that mattered because we had the
Okay.
courthouse.
Right.
But yeah, and I was really reminded about how different it is. We've been in cities for the last 37 years, 40 years, and you get used to that. And then when I had to go home to deal with my dad's, when he passed away and had to, handle his estate and the will and all that, we had to renovate his house. And so we ended up having to spend a good bit of time up there.
Mhm.
And everybody I'd gone to school with was still there. And now, it was like, hey, my wife said she went to second grade with you. And oh, yeah, your dad delivered my babies. And all of a sudden, everybody still knew us. And it took some getting used to because there's a certain anonymity you get used to in a city, even if you're in the suburbs.
Sure.
There is no anonymity.
No, no place to hide. I guess it's being like what, like if the principal's your dad, you're like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, there's no getting away with anything. My husband always said that
Yeah.
he could never act up at school because 4 people would have called his mother by the time he got home.
Right. All right. Fair enough. All right. So when you were a kid, so you're an only child. So what was that like? I mean, did you, I know I got a whole bunch of friends who are only children, and some of them, it's funny, they seem to be really split, like right down the middle. Half of them said, oh, I was an only child, so I had no one to talk to, and so I could never get my parents were always on my case because there was nobody else there. And so they kind of became very quiet, and they figured like I had to hide. And the other half were like, they felt like they got all the attention. They were constantly seeking attention, and they were very outgoing and did lots of stuff. Did you fall in either camp, or were you somewhere in the middle?
I would have said in the middle. I mean, I read. I really wasn't lonely because I had books. And when I was much younger, when I was a kid, I would make up all these adventures for my Barbie dolls. I built the Starship Enterprise out of shoeboxes for them and sent
Cool.
them into space.
Barbie
So,
Star Trek. I love it.
Barbie Star Trek, yeah. So I was always reading and making up stories. And, I'd have friends over and we'd do slumber parties and all that kind of stuff that you do. But I never really minded. I also didn't have any fights with siblings. I didn't have to fight for attention. So yeah, it worked out pretty well.
All right. So you were a reader as a kid. What did you read? Like, what were you into? What kept you busy?
Well, I loved anything with ghosts in it. So, any kind of ghost stories. I would get all those from the library. And if we went on vacation and there was a bookstore in the, a local shop with local authors or the museum, and there were stories about hauntings and ghosts, that was what I wanted.
Huh. Well, hang
I
on.
loved,
Stick with that for a second. I'm
yeah.
curious, just because as a kid, I was not a ghost story kind of kid. I guess I never really thought about it that much. What is it? What is it about ghosts? I mean, even then, did you have enough presence of mind to sort of understand what it was about ghost stories that you liked, or do you have that perspective now?
Well, my favorite TV show when I was a preschooler was Dark Shadows, which was the,
Yep.
long soap opera that had a vampire, a werewolf, and ghosts and witches and hauntings and time travel. And that's what I got to watch as a preschooler.
Okay.
So that kind of set the tone. So then I went looking for more of the same. and that was all the regional ghost stories that I could find, all the books on ghosts that I could check out of the library.
So just but a question though, but ghosts is sort of, but ghosts are, so vampires and werewolves and whatnot are, you know, in their own sort of subcategory than ghosts. So why ghosts and not, oh hey, I read every vampire book I could get or every werewolf book I could get? Why ghosts in particular, do you think?
Well, I read all the vampire and werewolf books too.
Oh, you did too. Okay, so it was, so you like the monster universe sort of.
Anything that was occult, paranormal, supernatural.
Got it. Okay.
I watched Twilight Zone reruns. I watched Outer Limit reruns. I watched anything I could find on TV that was spooky. That was me, and that was just what I always gravitated toward.
Did you have a group of friends who were into that as well?
I had a group of friends. They were a lot more mainstream than that. I had a few friends who liked some of the same things, but it was kind of scattered. But it was you know, it was good. We had fun.
Okay. So you did Star Trek Barbie, you read about werewolves and vampires and ghosts. What else did you do? Or was that kind of, that was life for you?
Well, I loved all the Nancy Drew Hardy Boys, Trixie Belle and Meg, Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators, mysteries. I was an original Scooby-Doo fan, still am. I was deeply disappointed when I found out that teenagers don't get to ride around in a minivan and solve mysteries.
What's that about?
Yeah, I was deeply disappointed.
Yeah.
All those books had lied to me, but I always loved those stories, and that's what I gravitated toward. And my grandmother, who lived with us at the time, was huge into all of those 70s crime and mystery shows. So Columbo and Mannix and Ironsides and Macmillan and Wife and Beretta and all of those. You know, we had a crime spree every night watching them put the bad guys away. So I kind of came by the whole mystery crime thing pretty much on my, I came by that naturally. Now I found Kolchak. Graham wasn't into Kolchak, but I thought it was a big improvement because it was mysteries plus ghosts.
Yes, in fact, I just did a whole show on Kolchak a couple months ago, the 50th anniversary. It was fun.
Yeah,
I didn't watch it until recently. I didn't even really know about Kolchak and I didn't even realize. And as I start to watch it, you go, wait a second, Kolchak clearly kickstarted the X-Files, and the X-Files kickstarted Fringe, like this whole chain of this just incredible lineage of that kind of the spooky investigator type. I mean, I guess you could argue, probably Poe maybe was like the original.
Yeah, and from whence comes Buffy and Supernatural and pretty much every show like that.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to jump around a little bit, but you just said it. So speaking of what you love to watch, Supernatural was an incredibly long-running show about hunting demons and monsters and other things. So just talk to me about your supernatural addiction. Because you're like a junkie extraordinaire here.
Oh, what? Just because I've seen all 327 episodes at least 6 times?
Sure.
There are 2 shows that hit me so strongly that I could say they changed my life. One of them was Star Trek, the original series.
Okay.
I caught it in reruns, but I was still, maybe 10 or 12 when I caught it. And that was a fundamental worldview shift, because I had grown up with parents who were very pessimistic about the future and, really didn't think we were going to last too long. And I'd kind of grown up with that doomsday view. And then here comes Star Trek saying we're going to be in the 23rd century and we're all going to get along. And the Russians and the Chinese and everybody's going to be on the bridge together and they're all going to be friends. And the world survives. And that was a huge thing into me. So Star Trek, the original series, was my first obsession, if you want, because it hit so deep. None of the other spinoffs ever hit quite that hard, but the original one, and the found family and the loyalty and the,
Right.
you know, I'll die for you kind of friendship.
Yeah.
We're going to save the world sort of thing. Never left me. And then there was Supernatural.
Well,
Now,
hang on, I won't, believe me. We're gonna talk about, we're gonna go deep on Supernatural, but you said something interesting to me, because I don't know that I don't know if I thought about it or for a while. So you were saying, your parents are, come from the World War II generation, and that very clearly, for those who grew up during that time, I mean, then no one could know what the outcome was going to be, because who knew? And especially when, everyone went off the war, and then, the women were like, guess what? Rosie the Riveter. And I mean, this was a sea change culturally. And there was a lot of people didn't make it back. And I could understand, especially if you were, a late teen or a young adult when that happened, and to have no sense of, we hadn't, to have that perspective of, it could really all be over tomorrow. And a lot of people didn't make it back, and it was very tough. So I could understand maybe, if you're the parents who have that sort of weariness from everything that happened, and then even when it's over, life is still, it's not like life is magical. You still have to go live your life and find your way. And I could understand. I mean, I can't empathize because I didn't, well, maybe a little bit, because we've been through some crazy shit ourselves. But at that time, and then to be the child of those parents, I guess I could see, that sort of that weight. I mean, I was a kid during the Vietnam era. I mean, I was watching, being a very little kid, but I saw Walter Cronkite on the news. I saw the soldiers on the news, and I felt the heaviness of it. I felt it. I didn't understand it really, but I felt it. It was heavy, and it did weigh. It weighed on me, actually, as a little guy, not really being able to textualize what was going on. But it was just it's a pervasive sense of, it's like a cologne that gets sprayed in the air. Once it soaks into your skin, you can't wash it out. So if you're the child of that, and then all of a sudden you see this thing comes on, and it's in the future, and these enemies are no longer enemies, and they found this commonality, and they bonded together, and they're going places and doing to things that we've never seen and never experienced, and putting themselves on the line. I could really, wow, that really must have been, like, in its own way, maybe, would you describe, was it almost in a way, almost, magical for you?
It was. And don't forget, after the war came the Cold War. So the
tension.
We're feeling echoes of that now with this, are we going to have a nuclear war or not? Are we going to, what's going on here? And that was they were very sensitive to those tensions. So there was a lot of pessimism that, this is just not going to turn out right. And then Star Trek came along and was this completely different vision for the future. And I hung on to that like a drowning man. And so that was one of my gateways into then looking to read science fiction and fantasy. And, that took me toward all of those aspects.
Right.
So, if you're paying attention here, you can see how this builds. First, there are the vampires with dark shadows, and then there's Star Trek with the science fiction, and then there's Lord of the Rings, and you can kind of see where I ended up. It's not so much of a mystery. And so fast forward, I didn't get to watch Supernatural when it came out, because my kids were all still very young, and I didn't get to, there were about 15 years there where I didn't get to watch anything if it wasn't on PBS Kids or, Disney. Because either they were awake and couldn't watch it, or they were asleep and I was tired.
Yes.
And so if you've had kids, you know what that's like. So
I do know.
I missed it, from the beginning, and I didn't really discover it. People had said, oh, you got to watch this show. And then we went out and came into it about halfway through the first run of season 11. I was hooked from the first episode. It was like, where have you been all my life? I binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months, so I could start live tweeting by the beginning. And they're 23 episodes. These are 23 episode seasons.
That's a lot of episodes.
Yeah. Binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months, so I could start live tweeting when season 12 fired up. which is how I met the people for the Winchester Family Business blog that I'm now a columnist for. That's how I met Fangasm, and I've written one of the chapters in There'll Be Peace When You Are Done, which is the book she wrote about the show's legacy and its impact on my life. And I was in love. This brought all the things together. This brought vampires and ghosts and supernatural elements, and it brought, you know, the monster hunting piece.
Right. So just for anyone who's either watching now or is going to watch it later, for those who just either don't know Supernatural, haven't really watched it, just give us the setup of what the show is.
You've got two brothers who are in a 1967 black Chevy Impala, driving back roads across the heartland, hunting ghosts and monsters, saving people, hunting things, and initially trying to find the demon that killed their mother and destroyed their family, and later on just saving people, hunting things, and preventing apocalypses.
Okay, all right. It's just a leisurely casual show.
You know, it's really a quasi-horror show, especially in the first seasons. The Monster of the Week, there was a lot of horror elements, and it was filmed very much like a horror show. And what I didn't realize until later with perspective was, just like Star Trek helped me escape my parents' negativity about the future, I got a double dose of that because I grew up with parents who were very much that way politically and also crazy religious. You know, the world's going to end any moment now. Depends on whether it's going to be the Rapture or the Russians. Could be either. And I realized in retrospect that Sam and Dean stopped the apocalypse. They stopped the big bad that I was brought up to be afraid of. And I think that was a thing that subconsciously really hooked me in that show, because they eliminated one of my big boogeymen. And, you know, of course, you don't see that when you're watching the show for the first time, but the sixth time, some of these insights do roll around.
Right, right. Wow. So, I mean, look, all of us to different degrees, like we have our passions, we have our, you know, the things that we're fans of, and, you know, sometimes even to such a kooky degree. But these two and you know, and you hear it, oh, I watched a thing or heard a thing, oh, it changed my life. And sometimes it gets said, and it's just sort of, you know, it's because we're just sort of not really digging deep to be a little bit more eloquent. But it sounds like these two shows, independently and collectively, really tapped into something really fundamental in your psyche and your spirituality and your just sense of self, that I kind of gave you, maybe some relief and a window of some a cathartic moment, and a window of maybe some hope that there's options, that there's a future that doesn't have to be. I heard a lot of one thing, but there's some other things out there too.
Yeah, it was very nice. One of the big themes, especially in the later seasons, is free will versus determinism. Who gets to decide your future? And that resonated very deeply with me. And Sam and Dean finally do get to make their own course and get rid of the angels and the demons and you know, God himself. So it was very cathartic. And I think that's one of the reasons it resonated with me, even though at first I was just on board for, you know, the cool horror side of it, and the very engaging characters. The characters are compelling. They have a lot of charisma. There's a fantastic relationship between the brothers that is very complex, and the writing was good most of the time. You know, you get 327 episodes, there are going to be a couple of clinkers.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. You know, we should all be so unlucky as to produce 327 episodes of anything. Yeah. All right, so I want to switch a minute. So day job wise, you and I actually have a lot in common. I've been working in the media in various capacities for almost 30 years. I spent the first 10 years of my career as a journalist, and the last not quite 20 in communications and public relations and marketing. Although I do less marketing, but I certainly have a ton of experience in that as well. Talk to me about the kind of work that you do with your clients.
Well, I now write full time, so the marketing stuff is.
So when you were,
but I was, yeah. Well, I knew that I wanted to write epic fantasy from the time I was about 14, And I also knew that that kind of thing didn't usually happen overnight, so I'd need a day job. And so I decided that I didn't want to do the starving in a garret routine. I'd had a cousin who did that. It didn't look like any fun. So I got my MBA in marketing because it was writing and, truth be told, fiction. Um, and so I did corporate marketing for about 17 years. And I still joke that those annual reports were some of the best fiction I've ever written. But I had to pay for printer toner.
Yeah.
And then after I left corporate, I ran my own marketing consulting firm, worked with a lot of small businesses, and then transitioned into being able to write full time. And now my husband and I are both in the writing business full time and have been for the last 12 years.
So just to touch on the marketing just for a minute. So, I mean, I'm still in it, and you gotta, you tell the story, and you can spin it, you can write it, you can twist it, you can, you put forth the kind of story that you want other people to buy into and repeat ad nauseum. What did you find? Because I work mostly in the real estate business, and that's a cast of characters with a lot of money and a lot of egos and a lot of opinions. What were the biggest challenges that you had when, what did you need to do to sort of get your clients? I mean, because I know the way I do it, but I'm curious, how did you get them sort of for them to buy into what you were you wanted them to get to a certain place. How did you get them on board?
Well, sometimes they were and sometimes they weren't. There are a lot of people who get very excited about putting a marketing plan together, and then all that excitement goes away when it comes to executing the marketing.
Yes, it does.
Fortunately, they pay for that marketing plan. So if they don't execute it, well, sunk cost. I think it was really showing them what kind of results they could get and getting them some of those results. And then they wanted more. But it was a challenging, even though I enjoyed a lot of the day-to-day work, I enjoyed some of the clients, not all of them, but some that I worked with. I always knew it was temporary. I wasn't trying to get to the top of one of the national ad agencies or,
right.
or get to be the top honcho
right.
For one of the big companies. This was a side gig, always in my mind, until the writing, was sustainable.
Right.
And I had chosen my undergraduate major in history because I knew I wanted to write epic fantasy, and I took as many medieval history courses as I could. And so it just took a while to come to fruition, but I did kind of have that long range plan. It just, sometimes took a little longer than I expected.
Mm-hmm. All right. So a quick interlude for those who came in a little late. If you have any questions or comments for Gail, put them in the chat box and we'll get to a few at the end. All right. So you're mentioning, all this fantasy. Did you, and your fondness for dark fiction, were you a Game of Thrones person?
No, because while I like spooky, I like scary, I don't like nihilistic. I need and want and like heroes. There have to be people I can root for who are worth rooting for.
Okay.
And I just didn't see that in that series, well written as it is. I want heroes, and that's what I deliver for my readers. Is you will always get a happy ending in my books. Now, my heroes may be bloodied and battered and have gone through hell to get there, but I'm not going to leave you with a downer. The good guys win, and that's a spoiler maybe, but I know a lot of people like myself don't like to read books and invest all of that only to find out that at the end everybody dies and life sucks and the world ends. Well, why did I just spend my precious free time to find that out? I could watch the news. So I unabashedly deliver escapist fiction, and I'm proud of it.
All right. So some of the stuff you do is you write steampunk. I love the steampunk aesthetic, but other than say like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I can't say that steampunk is a genre of fiction that I'm normally drawn to. I don't particularly read it myself. But what is it about steampunk that appeals to you, both as the reader and the author?
Well, we write Americans American steampunk, which is kind of different from British steampunk. And our series, The Jake Desmond Adventures, which I'll be working on the long overdue sequel to later this year. It's set in Pittsburgh in the 1890s, which if there was ever a place to anchor American steampunk, it would have been the Pittsburgh of Andrew Carnegie, right. And all of those robber barons that were in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was so smoke filled that journalists called it hell with the lid off. So we lived in Pittsburgh for 10 years. It's a city that's very close to my heart. There's a lot of the Victorian era architecture that is still in the city.
Right.
And steampunk to me is the Victorians as they never were but should have been. Yes, there were a lot of dark things about the Victorians with colonialism and caste systems and classes, and that can't be washed away or ignored. But there was also a tremendous optimism that science would eventually solve everything, that mankind could figure this out and come up with a maybe not perfect world, maybe not a true utopia, but something pretty darn close. And right. We lost that optimism in World War I and the Great Depression and World War II. It had pretty much been beaten out of us. But in that moment where the Victorians are coming up with these, Jules Verne contraptions, and they think they can solve all the mysteries of life, and they believe it's within humanity's grasp to do that and comprehend it. That's what intrigues me, is that positivity, that optimism about human nature and science. And when in my books, of course, you blend science and magic and the supernatural, as one does, because everything is better with ghosts, then, there's a lot to play with and unpack there, and it's a lot of fun.
Okay. All right. So you also spend a lot of time writing fantasy. So both epic fantasy, urban fantasy, they both share the word fantasy. What characteristics of urban fantasy and epic fantasy do both genres share, and in what ways are they different?
Well, I think the fantasy aspect is the magic and the paranormal elements, the magic, the monsters, ghosts, vampires, the ability to manipulate magic and energies. That I think they definitely share. Epic fantasy tends to have a bigger scope. It tends to be something that's going to impact the world, or at least a kingdom. It tends to be, mine are set in they're not set in our world's medieval period, but in a quasi-Western European, roughly late 1400s world. So that was the level of technology that I wanted pre-gunpowder. So you've got castles and sword fights and all that good kind of stuff. And then urban fantasy is set in the modern day world, the real world, only with the addition of hidden things like magic and monsters and the supernatural. And so both of those are just fun for me to write, because there's just a chance to delve in and play with your own world. I mean, it's kind of like Barbies on a bigger scale.
See, that's it. Barbies on a big scale. I love it. So you mentioned magic. So magic in its various forms, in a way, is sort of technology that comes from other sources of power, both natural, unnatural, or dark places. So what is it about the magic element that appeals to you, as opposed to, I mean, I know you love science fiction, but just as a distinction, what is it about magic as opposed to, let's say, science that appeals to you?
Well, I've always loved folklore and mythology, and read extensively as a kid and growing up, the Arthurian saga and all of its many, many, many versions, books that were not fiction per se, but were books by folklorists like the Golden Bough, about folklore and cataloging those tales. And there is a sense of wonder and magic and unexplained, the unexplained in the world. And the theories to explain those things often end up being grounded in magic and what magic is and it isn't, and what it can do and what it can't. And the more I read those stories, just the more captivated I became with them. And so to me, magic is the ability to manipulate things in the world through the use of energy,
Right.
instead of scientific tools.
Right. And I'm fine. I'm kind of thinking of it just now. And I'm wondering, you know, with science fiction, however much science is truly there or not, and whether it's real science or it's just, made up science, but it has its own internal logic to it. I guess with the science part of it is that, whatever mechanism that they come up with, right? Warp thrusters or phasers or time machines or whatever it is, here are the coils and this is the system and this is how it works, and it can be broken down and cataloged and identified, and you could basically map out you can have a schematic for how it works. Okay, as long as I can follow the directions, I can do this. But with magic, I'm sensing it's sort of, yes, there are forces and there are energy, but there's a sense of, I don't know, otherness or beyondness, where I understand, maybe the characters of the world understand kind of what the magic does, and they say, oh, it comes from the lake of fire, or the souls of my ancestors, or whatever it comes from. But there is no real schematic. You can't say, oh, all I have to do is just take a couple of wires and cathodes or whatever and assemble it, and anyone can just do it. Is there a sense of this? It's a power, and there's a skill that comes with its manipulation, but there's still sort of a mysteriousness about exactly what it is. Is that sort of part of what the appeal is to magic?
Well, it's a primal force. And, each of my epic fantasy series has a different magical system. So the magic doesn't work the same way in all four of the series. And so it really comes down to, how do you manipulate that primal energy? And is the magic something internal? Is it something you're born with? And so if you aren't born with it, you can't have it. Is it something anybody can learn, although to varying degrees of skill? Can you lose it? Can you gain it? And then what are you drawing from? Are you drawing from within yourself? So you're going to burn out? Because magic always has to have a cost, or you become Superman. Is it something that you are pulling from an external force? So that might be, an element like wind or water or the land. Is it drawn from a deity? There are a lot of different ways that this works. Is it based in liturgy and incantation, or are those just basically mnemonics so that you remember what you're doing, but the words themselves don't have power? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Building out those systems is a lot of fun for me. And so thinking about, how does magic work? Where does it draw from? Who gets it, who doesn't, and how does that affect the society? Who has it and doesn't want it? Who wants it and doesn't have it? And what will they do to get it or lose it? And what does it cost them? And why do they want to use it? And so you learn a lot about a person depending on how they see magic and why they want it or don't.
Well, that's an interesting point, that the magic comes at a cost. Otherwise, you're Superman, right? That means if you just, I guess, if you have an unlimited supply of this magical energy, then you're essentially an unstoppable force.
Right. And so there's no drama, because
there's no drama, right? It's like, oh, if I use my power for 10 minutes or 10 hours, whatever, I'm out of steam, or I get headaches, or I pass out cold, or I turn yellow, or whatever happens to me. Right. Okay, cool.
Or I shrivel up to a, desiccated corpse. I mean,
right.
There are costs.
That's right. Okay. All right. So ultimately, you and I we do words. Ultimately, are you more interested in character, plot, or is it a combination of both?
It's really a combination of both, and I'd throw in location as well, because I try to tell stories that couldn't happen the same way anywhere else, where the location actually becomes not just a backdrop, but a force and a character in the book.
Right.
If you have a plot, but you don't care about the characters, or they're not fully well-rounded and they're just cardboard cutouts moving from one action scene to another. It's doesn't matter how good your plot is, there's something missing. The heart is missing. If you have great characters, but the plot sucks and it doesn't make any sense and there are holes you could drive a semi through, it's not as engaging. I mean, yes, that's great. These characters are very likable, but you want to smack them up the side of the head because they're kind of stupid and they keep doing stupid things. So you really have to have both of those. And then with the location, whether it's a fictitious location like in the epic fantasy, or whether it's a real world location like in the steampunk and urban fantasy and the romance, I do a lot of research on those locations. I pick locations that I'm very familiar with, that I've lived or traveled to a lot, spent time in, because I want to get the vibe. And I draw very heavily from local legends and hauntings and ghost stories and scandalous histories, because I want to get it right so that people who are from there go, yeah, you did your history, you did your research.
Right.
But I find that there are wonderful plot ideas in all of that, and it makes the story very grounded in that location, so that it really couldn't happen the same way anywhere else.
I get that. So just while we're on this thread, I'm just curious. I just finished it last week myself. Did you watch Sandman?
Out of one eye. My husband paid more attention to it than I did, but I what I saw of it, I liked.
Okay. All right. So I'm a little bit more of a, I guess, more of a diehard than you. All right. Fair enough. All right. Well, that was great. But now it's a special section on the show where we spin the wheel. On the wheel are 7 possible categories. Wherever it lands is what you get. And the categories are Apocalypse, Stranger in a Strange Land, Music Lover, Supernatural Guest Star, Benjamin's Button, Quantum Leap, and Kick 'em in the Junk. You ready?
I am.
All right. Round and round. Who knows? All right, what do we got for you tonight? Come on. And for you, we got Stranger in a Strange Land. Okay. So you've written fantasy, paranormal, romance, and steampunk. What's one genre you'd like to write in that you have not so far?
I have really enjoyed reading cozy mystery, and I have not written one. There are mystery elements in all of my books because, if the reader knows what's going to happen when they start the book, there's no point in reading it. But cozy has its own tropes and conventions, and I've really enjoyed a lot of cozy mystery. So maybe someday, but I haven't done that yet.
All right, fair enough. All right, so now we're going to pick your poison. I got 4 choices for you: A, B, C, and D. We'll see how much time we have. We'll see how many we get to. Pick one.
C.
C. All right, we're going to find out if you have. No, actually, we're going to go to our advice column. What's the best and worst advice you've ever been given?
Well, I think the worst advice that I was ever given was by a college professor who, when he found out that I wanted to eventually be a writer, told me that I would never make it because he, with all of his background and degrees and notoriety, had not been able to get a book published. So why did I think I would?
Oh, shit.
Yeah, well, he's dead and I have 40 books in print, so I got the last laugh.
Good for you.
The best advice, I think, all the people who just told me that it gets better and to hang in there and everything takes longer than you think it will.
That's for sure. All right, fair enough. All right, let's do another one. So you got you just did B. Give me pick something else.
Okay, D.
D. All right. So this is a new one. This is art versus artist. This is the first time I'm ever doing it on the show, so we'll give it a shot. All right. So from Michael Jackson to Kevin Spacey, and most recently to Dilbert cartoonist Scott Adams, more and more we are being confronted with the realities of potentially having to choose between the art and the artist. Where do you fall on that?
I think it's a very personal decision, depending on how much the artist's disrespectful viewpoints or actions hurt people like you. And I think that the more you see yourself in the target of that person's meanness, the less likely you are going to be able to separate the two, because it is very personal. And that if they feel that way about those folks, they would feel that way about you because you are those folks. And so I think it becomes very individual. And I totally get that some folks are able to divorce it. And I also get that other folks say, nope, nope, that's me they're talking about. And I can't do it anymore. And I think I totally understand and respect that. I think it would just be really nice if we could all keep Wheaton's law and not be dicks.
It's not a bad one. All right, so we got time for one more. So pick one more. You got
A.
A. All right. So, all right. This one is it's all or nothing or steady as she goes. It's got a big wind up. So bear with me on this one. All right. I'm going to give you two options that will define the rest of your writing career, but you can only pick one. All right. And here are the options. Option number one: your next book is an international bestseller. You win every award there is. You make tons of money. Your book gets made into a movie that wins the Academy Award for Best Picture. You can ride the success forever. You will always be that writer. However, every book you write after that, I'm talking every single one, is an absolute dumpster fire. Critically trashed, commercial zero. And you are called a washed up hack who can no longer even string together two cohesive sentences. Or choice number two: you can keep writing as you've been doing, and your however much respect that you get and whatever your income is, this is kind of how it's going to be. So if you were up to you, given those two choices, which career path do you pick? All or nothing, or steady as she goes?
Steady as she goes. I don't need any of that stuff. I would rather be able to bring out books that make me happy and make readers happy. And, the rest of that stuff just doesn't matter to me. So yeah, definitely steady as she goes.
All right, fair enough. All right, so now I'm going to give you truth serum. I got 10 questions for you. You ready?
Okay.
All right, favorite flavor ice cream?
Anything with caramel.
Okay, what's one food you will never eat ever for any reason?
Gefilte fish.
Oh, I'm so with you. Okay, bucket list destination, anywhere in the world.
There's a lot I haven't seen yet in the British Isles. I'd like to go back and do that.
All right, scariest movie you ever saw?
Well, let's see. There was the time my parents took me to see Deliverance when I was 10, and that was scary for a whole different set of reasons.
Oh,
but
wow.
Bad parenting choice. I think probably the first time I saw the original Alien.
Oh, that would do it. All right. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I would like to be able to twitch my nose like Samantha Stevens and clean up the house.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Do you play any musical instruments? And if not, which one if you could?
Over the years, I took piano, guitar, and clarinet. I play all of them badly, but I enjoyed what I learned from them. And I guess you could say I could still sit down and read music enough to eke something out on the piano, but I'm never going to make it to Carnegie Hall.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Cats or dogs?
I've had both and love them all.
All right. Favorite cocktail? And if you don't drink, your go-to unwind beverage?
Black Russian straight up.
Oh, good for you. All right. You can see a live performance, sports, music, theater, whatever, any seat, any venue, any point in history. What's your choice?
Oh, there's so many options. The Eagles back in their prime.
Where?
San Francisco.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Okay. So last one. I already know what your instinct answer is, but I'm taking it away from you. Okay.
Okay.
If you could get even just one more season of any TV show ever, what would it be? And you can't say Supernatural.
I can't, huh? Okay.
No.
Babylon 5.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, God willing, he'll actually get a chance to reboot the show, I should say. Oh,
I don't know, though, but without Bruce Boxleitner and and I'm blanking on her name, the actress who played Mira Furlan, the actress who played Delenn.
Delenn, I know.
I don't know. That would be hard to go back and see because that was cast so well.
But Bruce was not even the original captain either.
I know.
He came in
I didn't like the
captain.
original captain.
Oh, okay, really? Okay, well, fair enough. I mean, Bruce was great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It was excellent. All right, so we have time for some questions from the audience. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box right now, but there was one thing I wanted to ask that we didn't get to. Talk to me about. Oh, sorry, I want to make sure I'm saying it right. Where is it in my list? Sorry about that. Bear with me one second. Oh, talk to me about Hold On to the Light. What is this? Talk to me about it.
Well, it was a project we did in, geez, I guess we started that in about 2015. It was partially inspired by the Always Keep Fighting campaign that Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles did coming out of Supernatural, which was talking about mental health and suicide prevention. And what we found was that there were a lot of people that wanted to talk about mental health issues,
right,
within within the fandom family. And so I admired what Jared had done with being very candid about his own mental health issues, which then made it possible and comfortable for fans to talk about and seek help for their issues, and even spawned a peer-to-peer counseling network. And I thought, well, I don't know any actors, but I do know a whole lot of writers, and we all come with baggage. What would happen if we talked about our struggles and how we dealt with them as a way to destigmatize the conversation and make it more comfortable for fans to own their issues and seek treatment and be able to lose some of that stigmatization.
Right.
And so I went out to all my friends and said, hey, would you like to write a blog post, and we'll collect them and we'll put them in a central place so that people who are also dealing with these can look and say, hey, my favorite author has dealt with something like this, and look, they've endured, look, they've found a way to live with it and move past it. Okay, there's a reason for hope. And so that's basically what we did. We've got, I think, over 150 collected blog posts, and I would like to at some point come back to it, but we've all been way too traumatized to talk about stuff lately. On the other side of all of this, maybe we can come back to it again. But in that time period, I got I think over 150 really wonderful, candid, very open posts written by authors at all stages of their careers, from international bestseller to new authors to mid-listers, talking about their various struggles. And the whole idea is to stand in solidarity with fans, so that fans can say, okay, I'm not the only one. And look, my favorite author has dealt with this. There's hope. And so it was that hope that was what you're holding on to with the light.
Wow. Well, it sounds like a really a virtuous endeavor, and I appreciate the fact that that you did it. All right, so we're gonna I'm gonna share my screen. I got some stuff to for folks to check out, so bear with me for a minute, and we're gonna see what we got. All right, Gail. So talk to me. What am I looking at right here?
Well, you're looking at the cover for the newest Assassins of Landria book, Outlaw's Vengeance. It's book 5 in the series. Book 6 will come out at the beginning of next year, and that'll finish the series. This is buddy flick epic fantasy. It's epic fantasy for people who don't have time to read Doorstoppers. If Butch and Sundance were medieval assassins, they'd be my heroes in this series, because they are they're good at what they do. They are witty and snarky, and so there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of action. I had so many people come up to me at cons and go, I really used to like to read epic fantasy, but I don't have time anymore. And so this is shorter, funnier, faster, but it's got all the epic feels.
All right, very cool. All right, well, that sounds great, and I hope everyone checks it out. As for me, if you're up for a little, I know you mentioned writing some cozies, wanting to write some cozies. If you want a little twist with your pulpy private eye fiction, I'll encourage you to check out my ongoing sci-fi noir series featuring hard-boiled private detective Angela Hardwick. In my mind, she's part Blade Runner, part Doctor Who, and part Atomic Blonde. The first 3 books in the series are Crackle and Fire, Fractured Lives, and Hot Ash. They are all standalone mysteries that can be read in any order. So it doesn't matter where you jump in, but there is character development throughout. So your mileage may vary depending on whether you like to be in on the action from the beginning or just jump in with whatever plot line that leaps out to you most. All 3 Hardwick novels are available on Amazon and published by Crazy 8 Press. And I'm now, literally, I was doing it today. I'm editing book 4, which will be in the series, which will be out in available in September, and I'll start writing book 5 later in the summer. Okay, so as I said, that's our show and our season. Thanks to Gail for coming by and sharing about your life and your writing, and to everyone who's watching at home. I'm going to be on hiatus for a few weeks as I take a much needed break while I'm away. As always, be safe, be kind, and I'll see you all next month. Take care, everyone. Be good.
Thank
Bye.
you.
All right. Bye now, guys. See you next time.